Okay, and let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to the Webline, a podcast about Spider-Man and his amazing world. Here, we discuss all aspects of our favorite web slinger in a fun, informal, but informative forum. I am your humble host, the Spidey Librarian, and with me is my friend and fellow podcaster, Michael Hale of the KMP Podcast. Michael, how are you doing?
Oh God, I'm just so very excited to be part of this. Let me say that I'm only one of two. I'm half of the KMP podcast. My partner Connor Hudson deserves as much credit for this name that we made as I do. Even though I'm sad he's not here, I just wanted to make sure that he gets full credit as being part of the co-founder of the thing. And I'm glad that you invited me to be part of this spider shenanigans. I love it. I'm very excited.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and I've met Connor briefly. He seems like a good guy. Maybe we can get him onto an episode in the near future. But in this inaugural episode, as moviegoers gear up for Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse in theaters this week, we're going to talk about the timeline to its predecessor, the hit 2018 movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Its origin is a little different from most comic book movies, as the genesis for its inspiration is owed not to a comic book, but actually another form of Spider-Man media. But before we do a daring dive into our timely topic, it's time to dish about the latest spiderific developments with our knockout news segment, the Bugle News Flash. Oh, and to anyone who is watching on stream at the moment, I just want to let you know this newscast or this podcast is going to be recorded live as it is right now. And we will be kind of harvesting the audio and editing it slightly for a more traditional podcast. So there will be some changes. You'll hear music where there isn't any right now, things like that. It's just something I want you to be aware of, but we will have this original kind of live video always on the YouTube channel as well. So for our first news item, if you haven't been living under a rock for the last 2 weeks, you have seen the blitz of media for Across the Spider-Verse. Now, we've gotten trailers over the last couple of months and, well, probably about 6 months or so, and they've been good, but it's been about the last week and a half to 2 weeks where we have just gotten all kinds of TV spots. We've gotten new movie posters, which one of them features Spider-Cat, which I love.
It's a cat and he's a spider.
I know, and he has a web shooter on his tail. I mean, you know. So we've seen that. We've seen if you like Burger King and you like Spider-Man, let me tell you, this is a good time to go to Burger King because they've got deals on a Spider-Man Whopper, which I've tried it. It's a Whopper basically, but the bun is red with black poppy seeds. So, you know, if you really take your supporting of Spider-Man seriously, you can totally do that as well.
It does not sound super appetizing, but it's okay.
I mean, it
for
tastes,
someone.
Yeah, it tastes like a Whopper. It's good. You know, if you like Whoppers, then you're gonna be fine with this. And if you don't, then don't buy it. You know. But yeah, there's just been a whole blitz of media as we get run up to the movie. And of course, I'm looking forward to it. I really want like one of each of those posters. There were like 10 of them, and it had like Miles, and one had Gwen, and one had Spider-Man 2099, and one had Spider-Man India, and one had Hobie Brown the Spider-Punk, and Spider-Cat. And, you know, I want one of each so that I can just like plaster them up all over my room. I don't know that that's ever going to happen, but, you know, the 5-year-old in me can wish, right? And let's see. Moving on
all
from
the
that,
things you could wish for.
What, a
I
bunch
mean,
of Spider-Man posters? I mean, I think that's pretty cool.
Tony, I think you have a spider poster addiction, my friend.
I I
I can see into the room you're in, my friend. It's a lot of spider stuff.
I have a lot of spider stuff. I don't have a lot of Spider-Man posters, so I don't know what you're talking about. I have a wall of Spider-Man Funko Pops, but I don't have any Spider-Man posters. I have
Funko
comic
Pops.
books that I have hanging up. As a matter of fact, you can actually see one featuring Doc Ock behind me, just underneath Stan Lee. It's probably not easy to see, but yeah, I don't have any posters. I don't have any posters. No, I need posters.
All right, you got me there.
All right, so moving on, the other big piece of Spider-Man news that we have from the last week or so is that a few days ago, the gameplay trailer for Marvel's Spider-Man 2 finally dropped. Now, it's been like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, since we had like the teaser trailer, which suggested it showed Venom, that Venom would be in the game. It also suggested, based on the speaker's accent and voice and what they were saying, that Kraven would be in the game. We've got confirmation that Kraven is definitely in the game now. This was like a what, a 10 to 12 minute trailer, right?
It's literally, here is a man who you think would be Kraven, who, you know, looks like he would be a 2000 somethings reimagining of Kraven, and then behind him is the even better, cooler Kraven. And so, because at first you're like, oh, who's this? Is this Kraven? What's he hunting? It's like, nah, this is the cooler, bigger Kraven.
Yeah,
Why does the bigger Kraven not eat the smaller one?
That was actually a nice kind of like fake out that they did right there. I really liked it. So, but my God, that thing was so much fun to watch. I mean, again, just the spider fan in me was just squeeing the entire time I was watching it. And I actually did post a reaction to the trailer, so you can find that on my channel. And I'll probably make a video out of that at some point, just its own thing, and drop it in there so you guys can just see me just I probably look again like 5-year-old me. Like my eyes are probably really big, and I'm just, you know, I'm jumping up and down in my seat. But so much good stuff to look forward to in that game. It looks like you switch off between Peter and Miles, like just at certain prompts in the missions. That looks really cool.
I think you can actually even switch between them freestyle.
Oh God, I hope so.
Because that would be
that would be so
definitely
nice.
be very fun.
There are definitely differences in the heads-up display that I think will be. I mean, it'll take some getting used to, but you know, I think it'll be fun. Oh, look, hey, Trouble's in the background. Sorry,
Aww.
I'm distracted by my kitty, but she's laying down on the bed behind me. She's sweet. Anyways, but yeah, like we're definitely getting Kraven and Venom. The Lizard was in this, and the Lizard, my God, the way he looked, I don't think I've seen him looking that spiky before. But
they're definitely going for a oh my gosh, the Gauntlet arc Lizard,
right,
kinda super big, super kind of gross.
Yeah, so super vicious, basically.
Yeah,
but yeah, no,
eats his own children.
Yes, I remember reading about that and going, "Woo, well, that's that's a direction that they went." So, but it looks great, and one of the even bigger pieces of news came from that trailer right at the tail end, because then it just said fall 2023. So that is an official confirmation from Insomniac that this game is definitely coming out this year. And I've been, you know, like, one of the reasons is that I waited so patiently and finally got a PlayStation 5 is because I knew that this game was going to be a PlayStation 5 exclusive. And so far, all indications are that it will be. So if you want to play this game, at least for the first few years, you're going to have to get a PlayStation 5. So, and I'm there. I'm ready. That's the pretty much the main reason I got a PlayStation 5, was so that when this game came out, I could play it.
You are prepared.
I do what I have to. So, All right. Anyways, with that news out of the way, we are going to now segue into our main feature, which is going to be timeline to Spiderverse, video games to comics to film, really. And I've been kicking around the idea of doing a Spider-Man podcast for a long time, and it's one of those things that I was thinking about doing this year. And then, to those of you that don't know, my cat Trouble, she had some medical difficulties. I very nearly lost her. For about a month there, I was kind of an emotional wreck. And she's fine now. Like, she's laying on the bed. She's happy. She's back to being a full-time cat, and I'm very happy. And now that that is more or less out of the way, I can kind of get back to thinking about doing something like this, which is why I kind of kicked myself in the rear and was like, "Hey, let's do this podcast." I contacted my buddy Michael here, and so we are working on this one. And since we're getting started so close to Across the Spiderverse, I just felt like this was a good time to tackle this particular topic, because I do think it's a very interesting topic that is worth discussing. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a groundbreaking animated film that brought together several different variants of Spider-Man from different dimensions. Its deft blending of comedy and drama, innovative animation style, and relatable coming-of-age tale featuring Miles Morales make it one of the top Spider-Man films to date. Michael, I'm curious, what did you think of Into the Spider-Verse? When did you see it? How many times did you see it? Let's dish about this really, really good movie.
So, I'm definitely going to say probably, this is going to sound silly. I really obviously liked the movie a whole lot. I am not necessarily a binge multi-film rewatcher. I can use, unless it's exceptionally good, few movies make it into my, I have to rewatch it several times. So this was kind of more of a, I remember seeing it once and I really liked it. And actually, to get ready for this, I rewatched it again, and it kind of just scratches all the same happy itches that the first one did. It was like, oh man, this is really good. This is, in my opinion, the best version of Miles, more because I think they did a better job at integrating him in a way that was more relevant for viewers today than I think when he first appeared. I don't know how hot a take that is. Comics are weird. I think that movies and video games make better versions of characters that can clean up some of the gunk that kind of gets stuck to comic characters when they kind of first come out. And so I really like the way that Miles was handled in the movie, much better than the comics. But he doesn't have all the arcs that the comic book character has had. So I would say I've seen the movie now twice. I much prefer movie Miles to comic Miles. And in some ways, even movie Spider-Gwen to comic Spider-Gwen. But all in all, I just think it's still a fantastic property that does things. It is the good evolution that makes me very excited to these characters. And that's where I'm more interested to see where they go in the next one, because then Spider-Man 2099 is going to get the same treatment. I think if you ask a lot of people, what do you love about Spider-Man 2099? They're just going to be like, who's that? I don't know who that is.
Now,
he
I'd
makes
say
no
that's
sense.
the thing. Yeah. No, I mean, I think you make a good point about the movie versions versus the comics versions, and I think that is probably, like, your ability to say that is, I think it's a testament to, kind of the production team that put this movie together and that may have put the video games together, because let's face it, when you're dealing with a comic book character, I mean, they get handed off to different writers and different illustrators, and they have arcs that are just ongoing all the time. And a lot of these arcs are where you pull a lot of inspirations for the movies and or the video games or things like that. And when you're going to do something like that, you better put your best writers in, and those writers better bring their A game, because what you have to do is distill down kind of the essence of the character, what makes them them, what is the best version of them, and then really kind of let her rip when you go, when you go to put pen to paper for this particular project or IP or something. And so I think that raises a really good point. What I really loved about Into the Spider-Verse myself was I really liked the theme that, anyone can wear the mask, anyone can be Spider-Man. It really is kind of a, like anyone can do anything they want. We all have the potential to do it. And try not to let, the way things have been before or the way things are right now, like restrict you. Reach for the stars and go for it. So that way, you can be the hero. You can be the person behind the mask. I really like that. And I really felt one of the most emblematic scenes of that was when Miles finally jumps from the building and they show, instead of him falling down towards the ground, they invert it so that he's falling up. Like this is the Miles rising here. And that's a very, like, that scene really elicits some strong emotions from me, because like up to this point, he's been told he wasn't good enough. The other spider people have been like, dude, you're going to get yourself killed, and like, this is him finally kind of taking control and going, no, I can do this.
Because that's the, what is it? Is it Let's Go Danger? Is that the Let's Go Danger moment?
What's Up Danger? Yes.
What's Up Danger? Yeah, it spawned 1,000 memes. Like the What's Up Danger goes with anything, because it kind of does.
Yeah, it does.
No, I mean, you have to, I think this is going to tie into some stuff that's going to be in the next Spider-Verse movie a little bit. Is like, there are things that are canon to what Spider-Man is as a iconic character. And obviously one of those is, I mean, the Tobey Maguire movies, as much as they have kind of faded from being on my top Spider-Man list, him finally being able to, like, the practice jumping and being very bad at it,
right,
to actually finally doing it. I mean, if you're going to have a character that swings around, eventually you're going to have a moment where they actually jump, because that's how Spider-Man works.
Yeah, no, true. And I mean, like, I like, so far from what I've seen of Across the Spider-Verse, that it looks like Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, it looks like he might be the main antagonist. And the conflict, just from what I've been able to glean from the trailers, is that, like, he's telling him that he needs to let someone die in order to save others. And Miles is like, but I can save one person and save everyone else too. And that seems to at least set up the conflict between Miles and Miguel. And I'm really interested to see exactly what the details are there. I really want to know what is going on. Why, I mean, one, why is Miles rebelling so much against this spider ninja vampire heroic leader dude who looks like he's kind of a dick, but he seems to get the job done? What is going on, and what is it that Miles has to let happen that he doesn't want to let happen? And so, I don't know. It's a continuation, I think, of that theme from Into the Spider-Verse, though.
I have a lore question for you, because
okay,
my knowledge of Spider-Man 2099 is limited. He's more like a copy fanboy of Spider-Man, isn't he? Wasn't the whole deal he could choose a hero that he was going to emulate the powers of, and he picks Spider-Man? He doesn't actually fit the normal, or did Peter David ever rework him to have the same spider theme tropes? Because I always thought he was more of an inheritor of the Spider-Man identity, while not at all being anything like the other spider characters.
I mean, if we go back to Miguel's identity from the comics, he was basically he's basically a lab accident. essentially. And I don't remember all the details, but I think he was trying to run some kind of a simulation. He was kind of a jerk to his bosses at work. He had that smart aleck thing going. But basically a coworker that didn't like him put, like, I can't remember, I think it put like a spider where it shouldn't have been, and then turned on the machine, and then Miguel came back looking the way he did. And I don't remember if like that was genetic material that was taken from like the original Spider-Man. I'm not certain, but he from what I can tell, he didn't choose any of that. He basically kind of was just like, he was made into this thing. He's from the same dimension as comic book Spider-Man. It's just he's 100 years into the future and things look different, and and all that. But to my knowledge, he was just made that way, and there's like a very tenuous link to the Prime Spider-Man, but it's very like, it's historical more than anything else, and I think it just has something to do with.
But Miguel never had like an Uncle Ben responsibility kind of angle. That's why I was thinking
he did.
That's why I think it's really interesting that they're working him into this, because he is a very not Spider-Man character. And so I'm curious, they're either going to do two things. I think they're either going to have to rework his background to have lost someone somehow so that he fits all the other Spider-Men.
Right.
Because he seems to be saying this is what makes, we've all had this kind of thing happen. Or they're gonna basically have to acknowledge that he does not understand the impetus to try to save someone. I don't know. It's interesting that they picked him, and I really like that they picked Oscar Isaac for him, and that he is kind of I don't know if he's the antagonist. He's certainly the obstacle that, whatever he's trying to get all the other Spider-Men on board with doing, including Miles is like, I don't want to do that. Whatever it is. So it's going to be that will be the emotional crux of the movie. I just still am over here like, Spider-Man 2099, huh? Okay.
I mean,
it's an interesting choice.
Yeah, they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and we'll see. But I mean, I'm looking forward to it. What would you say your favorite scene from Into the Spider-Verse is? Like, if you had to just pick one.
One.
Yes. And one of our viewers, Jeanette, said Miguel did not choose spiderness; it was thrust upon him.
Spiderness. Good catch. Catch, Spider-Man. I would probably I really like the Alchemex lab infiltration. I just, for some reason, that's just the one that sticks out to me the most, just because it's not the way that you would. I mean, that's the trope that they're playing with, right? Is like, here's where he gains true mentorship, and instead it's each of them not accepting the other one and trying to do stuff their own way, and then it introduces like female Doc Ock, who I still think is just very delightful.
Yeah.
So I just really like, and the fights where they kind of break from room to room, like, it's just, I think it's more creative and it's less visually eye constraining. Unfortunately, the reason I never chose to rewatch the movie voluntarily is unfortunately because the colors do a number on my eyes, and it's very, very hard to keep track of and visualize a lot of the different elements, especially when it gets into the final like color explosion that is the finale. So I appreciate the craft that it takes to make that finale. Unfortunately, it's very hard visually for me to kind of look at it.
And I hadn't ever really considered that. I mean, yeah, I would imagine this would be a difficult movie for people with sensitivity issues to really to watch. Like,
I mean, it's not like I'm here saying it's unwatchable, but I can focus and pay attention more to in the Alchemex, because the colors are much more muted and there's a lot more focus on the physicality. Like whenever Peter's getting smashed into the walls and he's like, "It's fine, I'm okay," like. And then breaking from room to room with the physical comedy of Miles trying to hang on to the computer. Like, that's played for a more interesting gag.
Good news. We don't need the monitor.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
That.
For some reason, I feel that was a better set piece that had more interesting parts to express about their personalities. overall, like in that entire scene, than just simply, ooh, they do real good swinging,
Yeah.
good swing.
Yeah.
But I will say, any moment that uses Spider Ham is just great. Like just
Yeah.
any scene he's in, it's just genuinely makes me happy.
And
It's
it
like,
really doesn't look like he's coming back to this one. Like maybe he'll have a cameo, but he's not going to be like a supporting character like he was before, which is sad.
yeah.
But
I mean,
um
he's got other pies to float
that's
towards,
true.
and
That's true. I would say, I mean, there are so many really good scenes in that movie, and I've already given mention to the Miles Rising scene, but if I had to pick another one, it's God, it's really a tie between two, which is the tail end of the Alchemax infiltration when Spider-Gwen introduces herself as herself. Um, that was just a really cool, like she's got the guitar riffs playing as she
he's got the
swings
cool
in.
ballerina shoes.
Yeah, like that was just that was a brilliant intro, and she saves both of their butts. And I was just like, yeah, this is a really cool intro for this character. Who actually she first appeared in conjunction with the Spider-Verse comic event. Actually, I'm very happy to say I actually have her first appearance comic book. It's Edge of Spider-Verse, like number 2 or 4 or something. But yeah, so it's fitting that she kind of makes her movie debut in this one too, because comic series of the same name. So
And I would also like to stress, and this is maybe just my perspective as a teacher,
mhm.
um, even though it's not, I don't know how to phrase this, it's not a scene that I would say is my like favorite, but the legwork they do to make Miles being at the school that he's at is probably the most important and well done animated movie origin kind of setup,
Mhm.
because I work at a school that is not like the one he's at, but it has very particular pathways that some kids go there because their parents are making them go there, and
Right.
some kids go there because they want to. So that kind of, I don't know if I fit in, this school is weird, I have to do stuff that isn't normal, like a normal school. Like when he's walking by, like, and his other friends are like, hey, I miss you. That is a lot of my students that
Mhm.
have friends at other schools that are in the neighborhood, and they kind of wish they could hang out there. So my students have had extremely strong attachments to both Miles and Gwen. And so I would actually say, in a weird way, the front end of that movie is actually more emotionally important to kids who are not our age, and therefore I actually think it does a much more important job than I actually think the Raimi movies did when we were younger. Because I know you're a little bit older than me, so you would have been in, am I wrong? You would have been in college when the Raimi movies came out.
I think I had I
You would have
think I
maybe
had
just
just
started.
actually I think I had just graduated when the
Yeah.
Raimi movies came out.
Because I want to say that it was
I'm
middle
old.
school into high school when Spider-Man 1 and 2 kind of
Yeah.
came out, and Spider-Man 1, again, like I mentioned, it kind of has faded from my memory a little bit, and its importance, but it tried to do a pretty good job of saying, like, hey, he's a high schooler just like you.
Right.
I don't think that one did the pardon the pun, haha, the mileage that Into the Spider-Verse did, because you're also dealing with a new character that everyone kind of has to get to know more about, that you can't just
Right.
kind of, because you have to introduce Miles's dad and his uncle and that their kind of conflicting relationship. So I would say, as a second place answer, the entire first about 30 minutes, even though I wouldn't say that it's good as an action scene, is still just as important, if not maybe even more important, than the actiony pew pew chop chop kind of fun, Spider Ham has a mallet fight scene. It's
So
good.
and this is in terms of just setting up relatability, right? For Miles to be relatable to those kids who may be watching this movie, like that
Yeah.
creates a real link between him and those who may whose situation may more closely mirror his than others.
And I think that it's really hard to do that now because we've got so many. I mean, in a way that doesn't come across as, oh, look, it's his origin story parts. I don't care. Like, those scenes are actually more, I remember now, and it's, again, rewatching it for the second time. Those scenes matter more to me now than they did the first time. And they're
Hmm.
actually better made at showing Miles being awkward. Like, he's like, ah, it's puberty. Haha. It's like, why are you sweating? like, like how to, even him talking to his uncle about like, hey, how do I talk to girls? Like, that's actually the only genuine emotional, well, I mean, it's one of the more human connections that they have.
Yes.
And that kind of like, to a younger guy trying to bond with an older guy about, hey, how do I talk, how do I be normal, is much more genuine than I think any single scene that any Spider-Man in a movie has had with any Uncle Ben.
And I love Aaron Davis. Like he genuinely likes Miles, and like he's just like, man, I can't have no nephew going around who don't have any game. I'm like,
I
he
just can't see.
genuinely wants
I
to he wants the best for Miles, and that's any parent is gonna relate to that, even if they don't necessarily like the Aaron Davis character. Like, they should at least be able to relate to that. And actually, that's one of the reasons that I'd mentioned Spider Gwen's intro. My other scene was actually when Aaron protects Miles during the fight and pays the ultimate price, and gets shot by the Kingpin and killed because this was an adult in Miles's life with whom he was very much identifying at the time. And then he found out this horrible thing. They fight, then he finds out, and he makes the decision, oh God, I've got to protect my nephew, and pays for it. And like, this is a big loss for Miles. Like, this is huge. And so like that scene is like, you can make the obvious link, like, he lost his uncle now too, but like, I feel like in a lot of ways we know more about this relationship from not just Miles's perspective but also Aaron's perspective. And so I feel like it means a little bit more. I'm not trying to downplay Peter's relationship to Uncle Ben, but we just know about the hero that Peter has made him out to be. Um, we know very little about Uncle Ben the man. Like, we get a little bit more in the movies, I suppose, but like in the comics,
I don't
dude's
know,
dead
man.
in the first story. So
I mean, Charlie Sheen kind of trying to, with the Garfield, the Charlie Sheen's version of Uncle Ben, for a little bit. I mean, they tried to add a few, like, you're not my dad. It's like, oh, okay. But that's where they
oh
went.
yeah.
I mean, they went a lot further trying to actually make Aunt May a better mother character in the modern MCU things, and I think they did that by just being like, look, there's no Uncle Ben here. Just don't worry. Just don't worry about getting attached to a character
Yeah,
that you're just going to see leave. And
yeah.
they've spent much more time developing that relationship until they didn't.
Yeah,
Um,
he doesn't exist on stage in that universe. Although he technically does exist if you take a look when he's packing in Far From Home. He's got a suitcase that has Ben's
yeah.
initials on it, which I thought was a really nice touch. So, but
I think what we're both saying is maybe we don't need Uncle Ben's anymore. We can have Prowler uncles and Aunt Mays. It's
uncles and
there are other
yeah,
alternatives.
yeah, you can have other close relationships that you end up losing because you're Spider-Man or Spider-Woman or whatever. Yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. We're going to go ahead and move on from Into the Spider-Verse and talk a little bit, go a little further back. So one might expect, since many Marvel movies they pull directly from the comics as their source material, that this film was made from a comic story. And technically, you'd be correct. But there's a kind of a big footnote that deserves to be mentioned, because the inspiration for the comic story Spider-Verse comes from another part of Spider-Man history. So, Michael, I want to ask you, did you know going into this, before I brought up this topic with you, did you know that this movie, Into the Spider-Verse, can actually be traced directly back to a video game? Did you know that?
I mean, I think we kind of just pre-discussed this a little bit, and I still stake my claim on that. You are wrong that the origins of this are the '90s climactic cartoon series with one of the most awesome Spider-Man characters ever, who I really wanted the action figure of, which was like Iron Spider, who was totally I don't know. Anyone who out there is like, but Tom Hiddleston is just Tony Stark's ward. That has no place in. Wrong, my friend. There is a '90s version of the Spider-Man where Iron Man and Spider-Man are the same, and I think that Spider-Man probably was a ward to a Tony Stark character in those cartoons. So, haha, claim, evidence, reason, game, set, match. However, I will say that traction didn't have as big an impact on Spider-Man as a brand until the games that you were talking about. So I would like to say the genesis of other Spider-Man meeting was not a new thing, but I do think that we can both praise and blame Dan Slott for all of the shenanigans because of those games. I would say that you are right, because there were. Am I wrong that there were 2 games?
There were 2 games, but I
Shattered
don't
Dimensions
remember.
was the big one.
Yeah, Shattered Dimensions is the big one, and I haven't played, what is it called? Edge of Time or something like that.
Yeah.
I haven't played that. I've heard it's not as good as Shattered Dimensions. Shattered Dimensions, in my opinion, was one of the better Spider-Man games out there at the time. But I mean, like, yes, I'm definitely not going to dispute that there were instances of Spider-Man teaming up with his alternate version selves, like previous to Shattered Dimensions. And I also agree with you that, like, the whole Peter Parker being Tony Stark's ward or mentee or whatever, like, I've heard that argument made about Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and it's like, look, not only is it perfectly fine the way that the MCU is set up, but there is historical precedent for it, that, like, and it happened in the comics
Civil
too,
War and all that.
Yeah. So, but I mean, like, in terms of what is directly traceable, Dan Slott working on Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions is kind of it.
Yep.
in 2010, Activision released Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. In this video game, players take control of 4 different versions of Spider-Man as they team up to take back the fragments of a mystical tablet that split during a fight between Spider-Man and Mysterio. The story for this video game was written by Dan Slott, who at the time was writing the Amazing Spider-Man comic. And have you played this game?
No, I did not. My Spider-Man video game experience actually, how to phrase this? I played the Genesis and SNES version of the '90s cartoon game, and that was the first one. Then I played the really amazing but kind of terrible PlayStation game where at the end Carnage and Doc Ock fused together. I loved that game so very, very much. And then my Spider-Man game...
I've got to say, I've only seen, like, I've watched that. I've never played that game, but I've watched that, like, chase at the end, and that is like a terrifying...
It's great.
Like, end game. It's
great,
thing.
Tony.
Like I got chills just watching it. Like, oh God,
It's awesome. It is a very, very for its time 1990s PlayStation game. And then after that, I did not play any game that had anything to do with Spider-Man at all. I did not touch the. I heard lots of good things from friends of ours who were mutual about the Raimi-verse Spider-Man games on PC.
Right.
Never played them, didn't have any interest in them. No. And then I picked up Spider-Man games back with the Insomniac game, which was just wonderful and amazing, and all the good things that can be said about it. all those developers. I hope they live in gumdrop houses made of gingerbread. Best Doc Ock story of all time, period. I don't even like Doc Ock that much. I would say it's even better, in my opinion, than the Alfred Molina version.
Ooh.
Wonderful, just so good. But everything between, like Spider-Man PS1 and Spider-Man PS4, I am a complete blank slate on.
Okay. I have played this game and consider it one of the better Spider-Man video games out there. Up until 2018, when Marvel's Spider-Man basically blew everything else out of the water. While
Yes.
Shattered Dimensions sometimes suffers from awkward camera angles or play control issues, the story, action, character designs, and characterizations are fun, and they make for a pleasant narrative experience. One of my favorite touches for this game is that each of the 4 Spider-Men are voiced by an actor that has previously voiced Spider-Man in an animated show. So, for instance,
Oh, are you kidding?
Amazing Spider-Man, the comic book one,
No.
that's Neil Patrick Harris. That's
Okay.
Neil Patrick Harris. Spider-Man 2099 is Dan Gilvezan, who I believe was the voice of Spider-Man during like the Amazing Friends era.
Oh my gosh.
Spider-Man Noir is Christopher Daniel Barnes from the animated series of the 90s.
Oh, that's so neat.
And Ultimate Spider-Man is voiced by Josh Keaton from Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And like it's little touches, like little kind of like Easter eggs like that I think made me love the game even more. Because I had friends who played this game and they're like, I don't know, I definitely got pushback against like the way that the characters handled, and the controls are a little clunky, but like, you know, I'm always a big fan of stuff like that. I know that a lot of people get annoyed with things like Easter eggs and fan service in comic book movies, or I don't know, anime or anything like that. I don't know, what's your like take on those kinds of things, like the little touches like for the fans?
I mean, it depends on the genre and the kind of thing. So, for example, let me kind of think about this for a second. I guess it depends on, is that all that the game is meant to deliver is, ooh, look at that, remember this from, I guess it's the joke, and I actually don't like Red Letter Media that much. However, I will say one of their more salient points was, the joke where they kind of say ATST, ATST, I saw it and I clapped. Is their point, is the game just meant to be, hey, look, remember this, clap if I clapped because I saw it? And I don't remember that game being talked about in that way. I just remember people enjoyed it. And is this again, see, this is where I'm kind of wrong. Is this a game where you have to team up with Venom at some point, like you can swap between them?
No, that would be Ultimate Spider-Man, and which is another good Spider-Man game. But no,
But I could have sworn it had to do with alternate dimension. Like, is there a black suit Spider-Man?
yes, Ultimate
okay.
Spider-Man has the symbiote. He has symbiote powers. And that's basically what differentiates him visually and in terms of ability from the other Spider-Men. But yeah, like it's just him with the symbiote, basically.
No, that's not what I'm misremembering. I'll find out. I'll find out what it is. I'm sure there's some goof that I'm kind of making. Was this out for the Wii?
I think so. I couldn't tell you definite. I never played it on the Wii. Are you okay? I did play on the Wii. I played another Spider-Man game, Web of Shadows.
That's it.
And
that's
he
the one.
does switch between the symbiote suit and his classic suit.
Bingo.
Okay.
Bingo. That's what was the name of that game?
Web of Shadows.
That is the one that I remember not getting as good reviews. Like,
it was
I think
okay.
People were, I think, wanting, if I'm remembering this correctly, and again, I'm the wrong person to ask to remember this correctly, I'm thinking that people wanted more of Shattered Dimensions at the time, because Shattered Dimensions came out in 2010. Web of Shadows came out in... Oh, wait, no, Web of Shadows was first. Never mind. I am all over the place. You have picked the wrong person for this part of the conversation, my friend.
That is okay. We're all human here. It's fine.
And I think this was, though, getting to another thing was there were a bunch of Spider-Man games, and I just recall people would find one aspect about them that they would really like. And I guess when you're mentioning fan service, I'm trying to picture people just liking some aesthetic about the game, like, ooh, this is the one with the noir suit. But then if you would ask
Yeah,
them, but
you
was
could
the
get
game
skins
good?
in Web of Shadows, and I remember getting 2099 and being pretty happy about that. So
But I think that was, I think with a lot of Spider-Man games up through, I mean, up until what kept me away from a lot of the Spider-Man games was the same kind of thing that was, I think, a lot of Marvel game fatigue when they made Ultimate Alliance 2. And I was like, oh, this is fine, but it's not Ultimate Alliance 1. Why didn't you
yes,
just look at that good game? Why didn't you make that good game again? And I just remember a lot of the
exactly.
Spider-Man games. One of the criticisms I remember was, I guess there was one game every 2 years for quite a while, and everyone would go, it's not the good one." And I could never necessarily tell which one the good one was, but people found their good one, and when all the games didn't match up to that good one that came, one game, two game, three game, four games before, or it could even been crossing into the Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 games. I feel like people just took out flagpoles and went, or this is where my flag is. I will not like any other Spider-Man game that is not this thing. And if it didn't have that thing, well, then that Spider-Man game was bad.
See,
And it got
I think I remember playing around that time the Batman Arkham games. One of my friends finally got me to play it. He'd been asking me to play it for years, and I was just like, okay, all right, I'll finally play it. And it was the first one. It was just Arkham Asylum, and I loved it because like it was about as close as you could come to like being Batman. It was like a really good RPG where you leveled him up, you got new abilities, you used those abilities, and it was great. And I remember thinking, I was like, I really like this formula, and I really like the treatment of Batman's rogues galleries and everything. And I just remember thinking at the time, who I would really like this treatment to be applied to? I would like
Spider-Man.
this treatment to be applied to the web slinger, to Spider-Man. And I
Well, I
just
think that's what
remember,
everyone. I think those
yeah,
Rocksteady games just brought the level of. I mean, ever since. I mean, Tony, the number of people that I've heard who are still mad that there is not a Superman version of those kinds of games. I think that kind of game really set a bit too high of a bar, because unless you're dealing with that studio, I don't know who else was going to make a game that good. I mean, I think also Superman fans have it pretty bad because, man, they've got Superman 64 and
yeah,
not
generally
much
hailed as
else.
the
The
worst.
worst. Do you like flying through rings, Tony?
Nope,
Because that's what you're going to be doing, is flying through some awful rings.
nope.
And Spider-Man has gotten, I think, maybe more games per. I mean, that's also to do with Spider-Man as a cash money printing machine. Um, I don't think you can really go 100% wrong with the Spider-Man game. I just think and I'm also looking up the voice cast of, for example, Edge of Time, and I'm just like, Steve Bloom is Anti-Venom, Val Kilmer is the head of Alchemax, like Laura Vandervoort is Mary Jane Watson, like Fred Taskasor, like I'm just like, Josh Keaton is in it, Katie Sackhoff is Black Cat. I'm like, wow, what a good vocal
Yeah,
cast.
yeah.
Damn, that's really cool. And I do not remember a single person though being like, "Oh man, have you played Spider-Man Edge of Time? Oh, it's so good. You really should play it." So
You
that's
don't
kind of
have as
where.
many Spider-Men in that game for one. It's literally just Amazing and 2099, and their stories are much more linked, I feel, than in Shattered Dimensions. And so maybe people just weren't crazy about that change. I don't know.
Wait,
I've never played that one. So
wait a minute. Now I'm looking at these. Spider-Man Web of Shadows is, hold on. Gameplay revolves around exploration. Control Spider-Man. It can swing. I'm trying to see if this involves. Do all these games just involve multiple characters? Like, is that a gimmick? Have people ever been happy just playing Spider-Man?
Oh no, there are plenty that where you just play Spider-Man. Just the ones that we happen to be talking about aren't.
Oh, okay.
Like, but I'm gonna move on and try to link this video game a little bit. So,
Go for it. Go for it.
the game was released to generally favorable reviews, and its success inspired Dan Slott to create a comic book storyline in November 2014 called Spiderverse, which was touted as having every Spider-Man ever, which it almost did, but technically didn't. There were some that couldn't appear due to rights issues, like they wanted to try to put the Spectacular Spider-Man, Josh Keaton's Spider-Man, into it, and they couldn't due to rights issues.
Yeah.
The story brought together even more versions of Spider-Man, as well as a few new ones, to combat the villain Morlun and his twisted interdimensional family, a race of beings known as the Inheritors, as they attempt to hunt and destroy spider people, or spider totems as they were called,
Super strong southern vampires. I think they're supposed to be Victorian. I do not care. I always read them as southern. The cuffs on the clothes just make me think Civil War era vampires.
If it's okay with you, sir, I would like to get that last sentence in real quick.
You may try.
All right. It's kind of a long one, so let me go ahead and do that one more time. The story brought together even more versions of Spider-Man, as well as a few new ones, to combat the villain Morlun and his twisted interdimensional family, a race of beings known as the Inheritors, as they attempt to hunt and destroy spider people across the interdimensional web of life. Now, I know you've read Spider-Verse, and I have never heard the strong southern vampires thing before, so please feel free to elaborate on that.
Tony, have you seen their outfits? They look like they just came from Gone with the Wind. I love them. They're so awful. Okay, this is part of Straczynski and Slott problem, because if I'm not wrong, Michael Straczynski made Morlun and the Inheritors, but they were not what Slott turned them into.
Well,
and,
I would actually say that Straczynski made Morlun.
Yeah,
I think the concept of making him part of a family and then calling them the Inheritors, like, I think
was an extension.
That was more Slott's doing.
Yeah,
I would argue.
So there's the idea, right, that they tried to kind of plug Spider-Man into a greater animalistic mythology, and that was Straczynski, and that was kind of anchored only in, I'm going to get the dimension wrong, Earth, or Earth 616, or whichever the main Marvel planet, the comic book planet's on, right? And then, so they had the idea of...
Despite what Nick Fury says in the MCU.
And so that was where they establish, okay, there's the great other, there's the primal animalistic kind of spider totem that Spider-Man is kind of attached to mystically in some ways, and that Morlun is a character who is a being that eats any character that is tethered to an animal totem, and he's basically evil, horrible life force vampire man with fancy outfit. And then they kind of Slott expanded that further into, what if there are more of them? What if there is a bigger group of them? What if they eat other spider characters? I don't remember if this was in the initial run when it was getting around to Morlun eating all the different Spider-Men, but Dan Slott is a sadist, and I know that he is equally loved and hated for this, but they had Morlun eat the Spider-Man versus Marvel versus Capcom Spider-Man, where they actually framed it in a 2D fight panel sequence. They had Morlun eat the Spider-Man from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which I will never forgive him for.
Yeah.
Because that was
reading that. I believe he also got Spider-Man 1602.
Yeah, no, and so it was just Dan Slott going around murdering all your favorite childhood nostalgic Spider-Man. And that was obviously part of the seriousness of ramping up it's not just one Spider-Man, they're eating all the Spider-Men.
Right.
And it was the again, my memory here is shoddy. It's that Moreland was the baby of the family, because wasn't he the one that was put in the goofy diver helmet as
No, that would be
punishment?
Karn.
Karn, that was Karn. Oh my God,
Yes,
that's
that was
right.
Karn.
Yes. And so they kind of tried to establish that, well, there's the family's kind of dysfunctional. There's the Tony, have you ever seen or read the Invincible comics?
I've not really. I mean, I've watched the show, but I know that doesn't have all of the comic elements in it because it's just
I
one
mean,
season. But
it's kind of
you
like
know,
where they kind of Viltrumited the inheritors into being these supermen strong kind of things, and
right?
the lead patriarch of the family is a very invincible looking kind of character. He's just this huge hulking dude who's just, it's, I don't know, it's the aesthetics
He
for them are
eats
very silly.
cosmic Spider-Man, which was like, which was actually one of the points that I think that people were like, "Whoa, okay, that this is serious now." Like, I've got all kinds of issues with Spider-Verse, the comic book story, but I also feel like it had its moments where it's like,
Oh, sure.
okay, yeah, that's not
Well,
that's kind of scary, you know?
because in the original set piece it was Spider Woman, or it was the Spider Woman from the I'm getting this so wrong, the Apocalypse world, where it was like Kingpin and the other supervillains kind of ran things. Like she was like an escapee of Magneto and was obsessed with basically killing them, because I'm trying to remember the name of that plot line.
That one I'm not remembering at all, but
because she because it was her, Spider Punk, Spider Woman, Superior Spider Man, and I can't remember the original OG team that they had kind of team up, that Peter has to be the leader of, to stop the inheritors from eating the being at the center of the web of life. And that they end that plot with, and then we're gonna lock the inheritors away on a world full of radiation and no spiders or something. They're gonna lock them away,
yes.
and then we'll never see them again. Until Dan Slott was like, "Hey, what if we what if we brought them back?" And then they
Yeah.
had
No,
another round of Spider-Verse shenanigans.
I mean, like, again, the concept of the Spider-Verse idea, like in the comics, was pretty cool. I was like, okay, let's see what he does with it. At that point, Dan Slott had written some pretty good Spider-Man stories. I believe he had like, he started with Big Time. He went on. He did a lot more stuff with like Horizon Labs. He did a lot of stuff that was just like, okay, this is interesting. This is fun. I want to see more. And then he goes in and he does this story. And right before he does this story, like literally leading into it, he introduces us to Silk. And oh my God. Like, she had a
Yeah.
role in Spider-Verse too. She was the Spider Bride, okay? And okay, I love the character of Silk, by the way. Cindy Moon, excellent character. I do not think Dan Slott, who I believe created her, should be anywhere near her ever. Okay? It just felt to me like, with the whole Spider Bride thing and the pheromones, and she and Peter couldn't keep their hands off each other ever. It just felt very cringe. It felt very, I mean, it felt creepy a lot of the time.
Yes, hence why my initial statement: many people will praise and hate Dan
Yes.
Slott for his work.
Yes.
This is definitely on the
And that's the
why
thing.
Slott.
Yeah, like, that's the thing. He's written some genuine, like, I love his run on Superior Spider-Man up until the end, but like his Octavius was doing things that Peter never would have done as Spider-Man. I loved it, you know? But then you've got stuff like this where you've got Silk, and it's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Like, and I don't want to go into it too much, but it's just like, Dan Slott is very hit or miss. And I feel like he was given the opportunity to, you know, he wanted to beat Stan Lee's run on the comic. He wanted to do like every Spider-Man ever. He wanted to kill off Peter. He wanted to bring him back. He wanted to establish himself as like the authoritative writer of all things Spider-Man. And I feel like he got his wish, but I don't think it quite went the way that he maybe wanted it to, or that, you know, I feel like it could have been better. I guess I feel like he wore out his welcome. And I feel like Spiderverse was the start of that, where it was just like, oh, what are you doing? You know?
He is the Peyton Manning of Spider-Man. He is he will win many awards by virtue of having been around longer than most of his contemporaries, and he has genuinely good talent. He's just also, unfortunately, cringy.
Yes.
So it's just a very he's a difficult guy to talk about. And so when you're mentioning his writing in like the video game, I don't recall you saying, "Ooh, this was a bad plot," because I think when he's one of those writers who, if he's paired with a good editor or a focused narrative, I think he does an exceptionally good job when he's allowed to just go carte blanche,
do whatever he wants
and run wild. It's going to be Homer with the shotgun, makeup shotgun. It's just going to go, it's going to get everywhere. Some of it will be on target. Some of it will just be off.
Yeah.
And then we're stuck with his proclivity for, you know, some of the way he writes characters is just frankly not, like with Silk. It's just not great.
And I mean, like, unfortunately, you have a lot of Spider-Man writers who've been like that. McFarlane. But you know, that's just kind of the way it is sometimes. You just have to kind of take the bad with the good.
McFarlane at least wrote a married Spider-Man couple that acted like a married Spider-Man couple. I love the dynamic between them in the McFarlane era so very much, and I did not realize how best to say this, how very not teenager-y they are as adults.
I agree.
And that is such a weird flavor to go back and reread those and be like, oh man, he is not anywhere near being awkward or dorky. He's a kind of cool dude who's married to a supermodel.
Yeah.
And then you kind of, I think Dan Slott, his big thing was he loves the awkward teen, bungling, bad Parker Luck kind of kid. And no matter how old Peter is, he keeps wanting to put that back in. He wants to rewind Spider-Man continually like a yo-yo. And it's kind of rough to
I feel
watch
like
a writer.
Most people who come into Spider-Man, they want to hit that reset button at some point, which I feel like, I mean, you know, I really wish they would age him up, and you know, like, I was never a huge fan of the marriage, but I was an even bigger critic of how they ended it. You know this. You know.
Oh yes, no. I'm not meaning to inadvertently lure you into a one more day conversation.
Anyone who knows me knows how I feel about the story One More Day. And believe me, I could do an entire episode on that. We're not going to do that.
To acknowledge the chat here real quick, Leah Rose has asked an interesting question. Which Spider-Man in the multiverse is more powerful? I unfortunately think that's just going to have to default answer to Cosmic Spider-Man or Captain Universe Spider-Man.
Yeah. Just
for the sake of, that is the end game.
Which is why it was such a big deal when, Solus, I think his name was, when Solus killed and ate him. It was like this. If this Spider-Man can't beat him, then what chance do any of the rest of you have? Which, you know, if I wanted to be a smart aleck, I could be like, well, Peter 616 beat he beat Mortland. He could probably beat Solus. You know. So.
I mean, true. I mean, there's always going to be the, you know, you kind of pull your, you know, you're the hero.
A lot of these types of questions, though, they come out and it's like, the real answer, like, you know, which is more powerful. I mean, the totally honest answer to that is it depends which writer is writing them and how good a job they do of telling that particular conflict or story or what have you. You know, like, which is why I tried to avoid getting into fights with people over stuff like that. Who's the better this? Who's the better that? It's like, well, who's writing him? You know?
Well, actually, I think, though, is actually why the Spider-Verse as an idea is why it sticks around is because you no longer have to have who's more powerful. You can actually have which team do you like better?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all on the same team. And I don't think the question will ever be, oh, who's more powerful, Spider-Man 2099 or Miles Morales in the movie? It's more interesting to ask, oh, do they get along? Like, which spider characters, it's like an RPG, like which spider characters make the best team,
Right.
and which ones would be the most interesting to watch or read.
Yeah, and we've seen, like, I think in the current or the most recent Spider-Verse story, which I think was called End of Spider-Verse, which I haven't gotten around to reading yet, but they did another Edge of Spider-Verse companion series where they introduced more spider people. And they introduced spider person that like that had to like they had to have canes on each hand to get around, which informed the way that they fought. But it's like a there are people in the world who are disabled in that way, where they can get around if they're able to support themselves up with like two walking canes, and I think that's one of the things that I like about Spider-Verse, just the concept of it. We could create it like any type of spider person, and that spider totem, as I'm gonna try to call them from now on, is just as valid to wear the mask and to be a hero as Peter Parker is, or as Miles Morales is, or as Gwen Stacy is, and so I really I really like that idea where you're not, I feel like which Spider-Man could beat up this Spider-Man, like who would win in a fight, like those are fine questions, but we hear them so often where it's just like, I feel like we need to ask other types of questions. Like, could there be a Spider-Man who, is hearing impaired, like Hawkeye is, or something like that? And how would they, what kinds of things would need to happen in order for them to spider as well as the other spiders,
I definitely think that gets to Spider-Man is a much better franchise than I think any. And again, I've said this before. People can look up the numbers on it. Spider-Man just prints mad money.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
Spider-Man is probably just the best branding character because, and I don't know. I can't think of this as many other examples because they don't work. Like Batman, they'll make other Batmen, but everyone just always, literally, that's what kind of makes people grouchy, is they're like, oh, but it's not Bruce.
Right.
Like, Spider-Man is literally just become a thing where it's like, oh yeah, no, there's like 10, and you can like each different version for the different qualities that they bring without invalidating the other. I mean, yeah, like someone being like Gwen. I think Spider-Gwen is a much better version of the fate of Gwen Stacy, because I don't think Gwen Stacy should have ever existed just to, be oh no, poor Peter. Like, them taking a version of her and being like, no, she can be a cool character too, with a much better outfit. Look at this. And then people can go, ooh, like my students love Miles and Spider-Gwen, but if you ask them, ooh, which one's your favorite character, they kind of just go, ooh, I just like Spider-Man. Like,
right.
And I don't mean to say that they're just like defaulting to a branding like dog whistle. I just think that unlike any other comic property that exists, straight up, Spider-Man just serves better as a multifaceted thing that people can just go. I just don't actually really encounter many arguments over, like, Superman. People will just go crazy but not shut up over, no, Henry Cavill's better, no, they should make this black suit Superman. I don't hear that with Spider-Man. Spider-Man's just a happier, better freaking topic, and I just don't know what it is about the character that makes people just genuinely happier to see more of him, that people don't really fight over, with the extension of, and I'm not steering this towards that conversation, Tony, but you and I have talked about how the real actors who play the roles is a different conversation. But as far as their characters go, in the comics, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Cat, Spider-Man Noir, like, people just kind of go, oh yeah, I like them all. And I may like one more than the other, but it doesn't become a, oh, that's not really Spider-Man conversation.
Right. Well, I mean, when you think about the history of Spider-Man, like Peter, comics Peter, has 60 years of lore behind him. He's got 60 years of Marvel's best writers telling stories of varying quality. And so, like, I don't know that it's a branding dog whistle just so much as like this version is just kind of like feels like it's the umbrella under which everything else is existing. But yeah, no, I think I agree with you in general. There's just kind of a,
It's just better vibes.
There's better vibes. There's more varied vibes, I would say. Superman is fairly monolithic. Batman is fairly monolithic, but
Yeah, but people are super tribal about Batman.
yeah.
People either, I mean, I'm serious. My friend's father, who one of our mutual friends, his dad was like, "Oh, Batman to me will always be Adam West,"
Right.
and that is such a different everything about Batman than someone who maybe like kind of closer to our ages who may be like, oh, Batman should be something more like Michael Keaton. Spider-Man has been Spider-Man, like a goofy teenager who fights dudes themed after animals that has never had a, oh, well, that's, I mean, the closest you got was like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was kind of a campy romp from, the 60s or 70s or whatever. But no one ever went out of their way to go, oh, we can't have that Spider-Man anymore. Like Grant Morrison did for he had to come along to say, hey, all Batman stuff is valid, and I'm gonna put all Batman stuff in all my comics. And people they kind of hemmed and hawed, went, well, it's good when Grant does it, but no other writer could do that. Where Spider-Man is just consistently like, nah, everything Spider-Man's always canon, and it's always good. And writers are a different story, but Spider-Man never had a thematic change. Like they had to go from like Adam West to the version of it for, oh my god, I'm forgetting the director's name who did
Snyder?
the 90s Batman. Not well, that's a whole other thing. You have retro. There wasn't a retro Spider-Man, a gothic Spider-Man, and a gritty modern Spider-Man. It's always just been treated the same way.
Right.
And something about that version of the character has also translated to when you crisscross him into alternate versions, everyone is just pretty much great with him with that version of the female Spider-Man. Awesome. Cat Spider-Man. Awesome.
Oh my god. I was so happy about that.
Nobody really ever gets, he's just such a very positive branding that I just think the franchisability of him just works where it does not work for any other comic character ever. And when you try that with other characters, something about maybe the era it was made in, who the director is, the style, like someone's going to just get real tribal over it and be like, nuh-uh, this was when it was good. The only thing I've ever really hear people get grumbly about with Spider-Man incarnations is, does he quip enough?
Oh, right.
But not, oh, does he use webs or like, I mean, maybe there was that crowd who got a little grouchy over organic spider webs versus the web shooters.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, no one went, oh yeah, but he shoots webs though. So he's still good. Like, someone, Janet kind of mentioning Spider-Man is very timeless. I think that continues to prove the case every decade when no one looks back at the previous decade and goes, oh, but that's not Spider-Man. The worst I may go is, oh, I don't like Tobey Maguire. Right. I think that 30-year-old playing that 16-year-old looks real weird in hindsight as we look backwards in time. But that's an actor thing. And I think that's separate from, is the comics. Mythology treated different? Is the aesthetic treated different? No one goes back and goes, oh, we need a grittier Spider-Man that punches enemies into dust. Like, something about him just he cannot be translated that way, unlike, or maybe no one's tried, and I think they wouldn't do it because it'd be career suicide. Like, for some reason, you could do it with Batman, you can do it with Superman, but Spider-Man it doesn't work, and I think that's great.
Well, I mean, I think when you use the word multiverse, that makes it easier too,
Yeah.
Like you just do. It's just like, oh, you don't like this? Well, there's the multiverse, there's another multiverse where your favorite exists, and I think that kind of I feel like Marvel Studios found a way to out Doctor Who basically when they did that.
No, that is
And
no, okay, that is actually a really, really good example. I actually really like that, except for the fact that people still get even more tribal over Doctor Who.
okay,
But the
we're not going to
idea
go into Doctor Who right now, but
but I think that idea of that, I think Doctor Who is closer to getting it kind of what I feel like Spider-Man's eternal translatability is.
Mhm.
But because it's a comic, I think that has kind of, I think Doctor Who is hinged more on actor. Like, that's what the draw is. You want to see who the new actor is to see what they bring to the role, as opposed to Spider-Man, which is, oh, they're always going to be Spider-Man. I just want to see what kind of Spider-Man it is. So
Right.
it's like the same issue, just flipped. I'm probably not making any sense with that, but I still think that point gets closer to the good transmutability of, oh yeah, you could absolutely have different Spider-Man. No one cares. Like, people
All
will
right.
enjoy it.
I'm gonna move us on. Let's see. Now, I have my issues with this comic book story, Spider-Verse. It's more or less okay, but there are parts of it that felt poorly planned, contrived, and in some cases just out of character for many of the cast. I honestly really enjoyed the Spider-Verse tie-in story that featured Spider-Man's clones going on their own mission, but so much of the main story was either forgettable or just outright cringe-inducing. Silk's role in the story, anyone? That I was really beginning to sour on Slott's run on ASM at this point, which was sad as he'd written some truly great stories earlier on. And I know we've talked a lot about Dan Slott already. Do you have any more perspective on him before we move on?
I mean, look, he's a guy with his own proclivities. I think that he just wants to tell story. He's an ex- he is a zoom in close up version of the best and worst parts of fandom writing.
Mm-hmm.
When you love a character a whole lot and you finally get to steer that character's direction. I think when you genuinely love a character, that means you are both the best and worst person to tell those stories, because it's just going to get closer to, well, what do you love about that character? So, like, I think
Okay.
Slot wanted to make a lot of cases many times where what he loves about Spider-Man is Spider-Man falling down and all the money falls out of his pocket and the lunch tray slaps in his face. That's what he loves about Spider-Man, and that Spider-Man gets back up again.
Right.
That whole, and that's actually kind of true of the Spider-Verse, where they're like, oh, Spider-Man always gets back up. I personally think the better part about Spider-Man is the responsibility angle, and
Yes.
that carries with you, no matter, even when your life is kind of, you're going to have to pick between, something that's good for the person I'm saving and bad for me personally. I think that's the more Spider-Man thing. But anyway, Slott takes that to some extremes, to the point
Yes.
where he made the Superior Spider-Man storyline, which was such a huge gamble that I'm still, to this day, I remember I think I was grumbly about it on some kind of social media, and you talked to me about it. You're like, I bet it's going to be good. And I was like, no, you can't kill Spider-Man. That's stupid. And you were like, no, I bet it's really going to be okay. And I was like, no. I was very defensive of it. I was like, you don't do that to a character if you love them. And it took like till the end of the run for the whole vision to be complete, which is obviously true of most comic runs. They'll do something
Right.
stupid and it gets people talking. And so by the end, I was like, yes, this is absolutely one of the best Spider-Man stories I've ever read. It's wonderful. I love it. It gets to all the things that is good about Spider-Man, and exemplifies that. And it even taught Otto to, if you take Spider-Man and put Otto to go through the Spider-Man ringer, will he come out like Spider-Man 2? And it actually had the answer that yes, he will, actually,
Yeah.
if you are true to what being Spider-Man is. And I was like, yeah, fist pumping, like, oh, it's such a good, yeah, let's go. And so I think when he writes stuff like that, he is one of the best Spider-Man writers around, because I will still go back to that. Go, oh yeah, if you don't, even if you don't like Spider-Man, you should still read the story
Mm-hmm.
because it's still very interesting.
Yep.
And then unfortunately, he also writes everything else he writes, which is cringy, or he gives Peter $1 billion just so he can yank it away from him. Like he's
Right.
really mean to Peter. He's like that loving uncle who kind of really cares about you, but is gonna rib you at the same time. He's kind of handing you money, like
Right. No,
it's so.
I mean, like he's yes, he's a little mean to Peter, which I don't really fault him for, because I mean, good writers are often going to put their babies, their protagonists, through the ringer. It makes for good drama, and I don't have a problem with that. I feel like sometimes it just lands well, and sometimes it does not. And
Well, I mean, I think that hits at a good point. Like, is he meaner than the author that wrote Kraven the Last Hunt? Is he meaner than that to Peter?
I mean, that's a story worth exploring at some point, because yeah, that is a vicious fate right there.
I mean, was it Dan Slott that did the Gauntlet storyline where it was just a year of just kicking Peter in the face?
I don't remember if he did the Gauntlet.
I think that was.
I think that was before. I think that was before Dan Slott, like just before.
I think it was too, and so I think that was that may have been. Anyway, so I just think, to sum up Slott, he has a lot of he's kind of like Alan Moore, in that if you have a good editor and your editor is in the background saying, hey, yeah, you can't do this, buddy, and he's like, but I really want to. No, you can't do that. Like, I feel like having a good editor to kind of restrain some things is a good thing for him. I think though that he got to the point where, and again, this is kind of the Manning thing. Like, when you're that good and your talent is really that good, yeah, you're going to attract a lot of people who are going to point out your flaws. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but I've been writing Spider-Man longer than anyone, at least in recent decades. So he's going to happen to churn out some really good stuff. So I definitely think he's someone who is a really good creator. He has made some very iconic content. It's just, just like any other writer. Yeah, but then he's got his bad stuff. Just like, I mean, people who love Claremont forget that Claremont wrote a lot of bad character traits into those X-Men. Like, he made Professor X a real jerk. And, so as much as anyone could come along and be like, oh, Claremont's the best X-Men writer. Yes, he probably is. He also did a lot of stuff to those characters that was irreparably, you can't reverse that either, because that's how big a deal he was. So I think Slott is just that for Spider-Man.
Okay, that makes a certain amount of sense. I'm far from saying that Dan Slott is the worst Spider-Man writer. I don't even know who that is.
Oh no, he's not the worst.
Yeah, no,
there are other writers for that.
Yeah,
Bendis
but he definitely
is his own category.
He definitely lands bad at times, but he also, like you've said, he's people, and he's he as people, we make mistakes, we're inconsistent, we do things like that. I just wish that he had his overall tone had been a little bit more consistent. But we got Superior Spider-Man out of him, and again, love that run. But you got to take the bumps along with the good stuff as well. So, all right. I'd mentioned earlier that the Spiderverse comic event occurred in November 2014 and ran until February 2015. In what I would call a twist of fate, November 2014 is also when Sony's big email hack scandal happened. That's when we discovered they were planning to work on an animated Spider-Man film. I'm going to redo that. That's when we discovered they were planning to work on an animated Spider-Man film with Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. So Sony Pictures Animation put out an announcement of the development of an animated Spider-Man film. Michael, do you remember the great Sony email hack of 2014?
Tony, do I remember that they wanted to make a young Aunt May spy movie? How could I forget what we were robbed of, Tony? We were robbed of the greatest Spider-Man property to ever not exist. No,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember.
the Black Widow prequel.
Yeah. Oh my God. They were. Look, I. This is. I. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. It's Amy Pascal was the
Yes.
executive, right? Who
Yeah.
was behind kind of she would have the final run or the final say on these kinds of projects. I think that she is very similar to Kathleen Kennedy in that very, very in the long term can absolutely pick some real winners in certain kinds of categories for their property. So, like, for example, she was behind a lot of the very good casting decisions that went on for, like, the Raimi Spider-Man movies and the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I think in terms of casting, 10 out of 10 decisions were made with her at the helm of that. At the same time, plot decisions not so much. And I think, like, in the same way that
Okay.
Kathleen Kennedy should rightfully be praised for so many of the good things that happened with Star Wars, you can also point to some of those decisions coming back and being like, I was also at the helm for some of the not so great ones. Like, who let this whatever, oh my God, whatever his name is, JJ Abrams, who let him start writing a trilogy and not end a trilogy, right? So
Right.
I think that there were some that email is very indicative of you can be a good producer. That doesn't mean that you're a good plot creator. And I
Right.
think that in this case, those emails probably let loose a bunch of stinky air that got to be evaporated from the Tupperware to then clean the palate of everyone. Go, oh, good. Look, everyone thinks they're awful. Well, we clearly won't make a Silver Sable movie now. Now that everyone knows we were planning it, I purposely.
Wasn't that like a Black Cat and Silver Sable movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of
Silver and
course.
Black or something like that.
Who knows, man? They had a sinister. They've been wanting to do a Sinister Six for so long. It's the same problem, in my opinion, as whenever, let's make a Justice League movie. Well, you need some time to bring these characters. No, you don't. Just do it now. You don't need it. That's not going to be the third movie. That should maybe be the fourth or fifth. No, Sinister
I
Six.
really
Let's
do.
set him up in movie two.
I really do wish, though, that by this point we had seen a decent iteration of Felicia Hardy on screen. Like, I really don't feel like we have, at least as far as the movies go. You know, like, yeah, she technically showed up in Amazing Spider-Man 2, but no, she didn't. You know.
I think that is a Felicia. Uh, I think
Anyways,
that's
that's a tangent for another episode, but you know, like, I feel like that's a noteworthy character who has not really gotten any good love on screen, you know?
I think that Spider-Man should. That's why I'm very glad that they've just been like, hey, look, here's just Mary Jane, but we need to have Gwen Stacy. No, you don't. No, you don't. It's fine. Just have Mary Jane and let it be Mary Jane the whole time. It's just there's so many other things that Spider-Man canon stuff needs to do that I think that was a very appropriate decision. Just be like, nah, just focus on Mary Jane. Have that be the emotional core of the story. Then you don't have to do the Amazing Spider-Man route and introduce a really, really good Gwen Stacy only to have it be like, oh, but look, now she dead. I'm like, that made me feel great.
Oh, that
Emotionally
movie.
investing in the good casting that you made here just to
That
kill that
movie. I
character.
tell you.
Ugh, that movie.
In 2017, they released a teaser trailer that revealed Into the Spider-Verse's unique visual style. It immediately caught the attention of fans and critics alike with its stunning animation and fresh take on the Spider-Man mythos. Lord and Miller spent years developing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse's unique animation style, which combined traditional hand-drawn animation with cutting-edge computer animation techniques. The result was a film that would look and feel at times like a living, breathing comic book. Michael, what did you think of the animation in Into the Spider-Verse in particular?
Tony, are you trying to have me killed? Did you pick the one question that's going to get me killed? So this is what I call the One Piece issue. One
Okay.
Piece as a manga looks very good in black and white while it is still. When it is animated and moving, up until the recent ability for them to pour the quality they needed in to make it look real good, it did not look very good to me, and I was actually a little put off by watching it in motion. Spiderverse is kind of, they do this frame rate switching, which to
Yes.
me is not, it just to my eyes and the way that they're doing it does not actually appear, I think, as fluid as it does consistently all the time. And I personally think that has to do with the way that they do color palette cycling. So again, I'm just going to refer back to I really like the Alchemex Lab animation
Right.
because the palette was much more stable as a color base. So what I mean by that is my eyes don't have to try to seem like they're adjusting to a frame rate that is inconsistent with what I'm seeing flashing behind them. So that's why that last big giant spectacle is very difficult for me to watch because it makes the animation look like it's going at 20 frames per second,
Mm-hmm.
which to me does not translate into smoothness. But when they do the whole body, like there's a scene where Gwen and Miles, when they're tag teaming, I think it's Kingpin, and they're slapping Kingpin around,
Right.
and they kind of do this cool, like they do a little fist bump. When you have the motions of the characters be more full body close up shots, like their faces, I think it looks wonderful. I love how they emote and how they look. But when it gets into the big, colorful, wacky set pieces, my eyes just can't do it. And so it feels like I'm looking at something that was rendered improperly. And then I realize, oh, that's a stylistic choice they're making. It's not
Yes.
something wrong with what I'm watching.
No,
That's the way
it's
it's supposed to look. And I am very not the big, like, I know they're going to repeat that with the new Ninja Turtles movie
mm-hmm.
that they're making, and it's very clear that they are kind of copying that style. However, I would say it may look better for that property if they're not having lots of bright, colorful, wacky colors. So I'm not trying to be out here saying, oh, it's not for me. I am trying to be out here saying it's just the way that they chose to do it. I acknowledge craftsmanship, 110%. Any person who worked on the animation team of that movie deserves any and all praise that they get, and anyone who loves it, please love it. Go watch the next one, love it more. I'm hoping, but I'm very fearful that it's going to be the same thing again. That they're going to have a big giant sequence with a million Spider-Men, and my eyes are going to be like, I can't focus on anything that's going on here, and I'm just going to have to go back and watch it again. And so I'm hoping they don't do that again, just for me personally. But I
right.
do think that it's for close-ups, for when the characters, when they're not using particle effects, I think everything looks fantastic. But the minute they turn the color dial spectrum up to infinity, that animation style and my eyeballs do not work. And I would have dreaded having to have watched it in 3D because I think I probably would have melted. In
Oh
addition to, I
man.
wear glasses, and so I would
Yeah.
have had to have 3D glasses over my glasses watching that. That would have been my nightmare. So unfortunately, I have to be the guy who's like, oh no, it's real good, except for the part where I'm sure is everyone's favorite scenes, where it's the big cool action scenes.
Well,
And
I
I'm
mean,
actually like
I
the
mean, you're
opposite.
you
I love when they're standing still. I love when the palettes are darker. Like when Miles is with his uncle in the doing the spray paint, beautiful. When Miles is doing the jump, beautiful. But when it gets into, actually, that is probably the most cinematically beautiful sequence in the entire thing.
okay.
Is the falling up, because it's so much slower and the palette is different and it's not colors going wacky all over the place. But for the big multiverse sequences, like the fight in the accelerator, both of them at the beginning and in the end, hard for me to watch. And I know that has some of the best set pieces that I'm sure people love. And I'm just over here like, I don't think it's as good.
Okay,
So
okay, I need to interject here because you keep talking about the big action pieces. When I was thinking of an example of the animation that I liked, I mean, the big action, fights at the end, like, yeah, those are fun, but those are not what I'm recalling. For me, Um, it's the moments when Miles is like, you know, uh, he's discovering his powers and ends up having to walk on the wall
Like
outside with
the
pigeons and
physical
stuff,
comedy stuff.
like stuff like that, or stuff when he's like looking around and he's like, do people know, do they know, and you see like the comic book panels, like, you know, coming into frame, and then like he's leaving them behind as he keeps walking, like stuff like that is what sticks out to me when you talk about the animation of this movie. And yeah, I, you know, like I
Oh, okay. I
remember,
get you more now.
yeah, I remember like the stylistic choice to make Miles, his frame rate when he starts off as a superhero is like, I think it gradually gets increased as he comes into his own and it gets more smoother and everything. And like, I mean, like, I think that's really cool conceptually. I acknowledge that's going to cause problems for people who notice, like, whose eyes, whose brains notice those kinds of things, but not at, maybe not as they don't integrate them as smoothly as others might. Um, but I mean, like, overall, I remember watching this film with my fiance for the first time, and I really wanted to get her reaction because I knew she was going to like it. And I was like, "Sweetie, you've got to watch this." And she loved so much of the stuff they did with the animation because it had been so different from everything that had come before it. And I feel like that, you know, that is probably a big reason why it won the what was it that won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in 2018, I think. But anyways,
Oh,
like,
did it? I did not know
yeah,
that.
yeah, it did. It beat out at least one other really big animated film too. I can't remember which one, but it was kind of a big deal at the time. I was like, wow, that was something special. So, all right. I think, yes, we're going to talk a little bit more uh, about the adaptation itself here. Lord and Miller had agreed to make an animated Spider-Man movie on the condition that they be allowed to adapt Dan Slott's Spider-Verse story. This adaptation was a very loose one with many significant alterations. The most notable being that the story would focus on Miles Morales and his journey to becoming Spider-Man instead of Peter Parker. The Inheritors storyline was scrapped entirely, but there were several iterations of Spider-Man from other dimensions that came together to help Miles defend his reality. What did you think of the changes from the comic? Do we miss the Inheritors? Was that
No.
an opportunity that was taken from us?
No.
On-screen Inheritors?
No. Oh my God. The Inheritors as an idea, Moreland as an idea on paper on a comic book. Yeah, sure, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Vampire guy that eats people. Whatever. As a movie, as making that a movie thing we're seeing, no, get out. Burn that to the ground. They I don't know if I would have chosen Kingpin as my empathy vessel for a villain who's trying to get his family back, but they did, and it was a really good choice, and it still was a much more human choice um, to go with. And I like the reference that they used for him, like Kingpin being this huge black square. I love when they show it's unintentionally really funny when they show his family portraits and it's him as this huge round ball
Oh, see, because I
and
think
his
that was
regular size.
absolutely intentional myself.
Oh, well, I mean, but his regular looking family, and I was
Yeah.
like, what a great choice. No, everything about that movie as an adaptation, everything about it is superior. Like
Yes,
every single part of it.
I would agree.
It's the only thing that obviously I think people could start getting into some maybe some nitpicks about is, ooh, wouldn't have this been a cooler Peter to use than Spider-Man Noir? They could have brought in this one, but I think that doesn't. But I don't think anyone. I just think them updating, giving Miles his own story. Who needs to see Spider-Man's origin story as Peter Parker again? Not me. I'm good. I never
Right.
want to see Peter Parker's origin story again, which made giving Miles one refreshing and it was good and it made, just like how MCU Civil War made that terrible comic much better because there was years of distance from it to look back and go, okay,
Right.
what do we really need from this? We just need these things. We don't need the rest.
Right.
Um,
How do we
the
distill this, basically?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they still have the same principle. Okay, Spider-Man is fighting Green Goblin and there is an accident and he dies and Miles is going to become the new Spider-Man. That's it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
But they did it in a much better way that, short of anyone's frankly racist reasons for not liking Miles as a character, both when he first appeared and in any other version of him, people trying to dog whistle it as, well, if you like the character, you should just make a new one. That's not how Spider-Man works. Like, Spider-Man is actually a character where you can inherit the mantle kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And it's great. And so this was an updated, more Miles focused version, other than people being grouchy. It was like you were watching a Spider-Man movie where you were promised Peter Parker and then they bait and switch you. Like they
No.
told you from the beginning, it's
Yeah.
Miles, he's the main character. And that was great. And I think that's wonderful. And they should do that. I'm glad they're still doing that. So I would say everything about that movie over the inherent. I mean, will I be sad that there's no superior Otto, the one who didn't learn his moral lesson, kind of intermixing the team? Yeah, I'll be a little sad. But if I want that, I can go read the comic. It ain't going anywhere. This
I'm
was a
really
much.
I'm really happy to hear your use of the word mantle because I
Yeah.
remember thinking about the Spider-Verse, and particularly like in Ultimate Spider-Man, the comics where Peter Parker gets killed and then Miles eventually becomes the Spider-Man of that, dimension, reality,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call it. And in a lot of ways, if you think about Spider-Man or Spider-Woman or whatever as being a mantle, then there's no reason that, it couldn't, in theory, go to just about, anyone else, if you are if you're bitten by the spider or what have you, you become the chosen one, then the mantle has been passed on to you. And you have to think about whether or not you want to accept it. And so I really, I really dig the idea of Spider-Man being a mantle that can be passed on rather than just one identity of one superhero ever, like,
Yeah.
and I feel like in a lot of ways that's kind of the direction that Marvel Comics has started to go to, like with Jane Foster Thor and Bucky as Cap and stuff like passing on the mantle.
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
giving it to people who are also worthy of the title and can fill that role.
Oh, I mean, weirdly, I mean, look, comic books are just repeating the same thing over and over again. The 80s was nothing but, oh, here's this woman called, her name is Miss Marvel. Well, not Miss Marvel. Monica Rambeau, her first incarnation.
Oh, Captain Marvel.
Here's Captain Marvel, this dude called Black Knight. Here's a She-Hulk, and these are your Avengers now. And I really think that they've always been passing mantles on to characters. It's just they keep the old character around longer than they should, which is why I really think, even though it did not happen, and mentioned Claremont earlier, his initial idea was, no, these X-Men characters, they graduate, they die, they grow up, they stop going to school.
Right.
You see new characters come in, like Scott's eventually gonna go off to Alaska and just have a family, and you never see him again because you don't need to, because there's other characters. And I think comic books kind of have the nostalgia issue of, yeah, but what if that was your favorite character? Do you really want to see them
that
go?
iteration is the person that you think is the way that it should be for all time? Yeah, no, it's
but one of my absolute favorite panels of all time in any comic ever is when it is Richard Rider, Nova, comes back into comic continuity after having been gone for a while and comes across Kid Nova, Vision's daughter, Kamala Khan, and Miles. And like Miles trying to explain to Richard Rider, there's like, well, I'm Spider-Man. Isn't yeah, but he's dead. Yeah, but yours isn't. What are you talking about? And it's just eventually ends and they're all explaining like who they are, and it's just Rider being like, I hate every single word of this sentence that you have said. And I love it because
That's
I want
funny.
actually, but the Champions was such a good group, and I really think they need to do more of that stuff. Like, not saying that old characters can't have their place, but the more younger characters you bring in, the more your property can kind of grow.
Yes.
And I just think that Miles is one of the best. Miles and Kamala actually are two of the best versions of doing that in the past 20 years. I think that Quasar actually had some good stuff with some 80s characters with passing some mantles onto them and keeping them around, but they stopped doing it after a long time. And so I think Miles is point blank one of the better attempts at that. And I think it's why he's just great. It's why my students love him and think he's awesome, and they just buy his stickers. And I have seen so many Miles Spider-Man backpacks in my past like 4 years of teaching than I would have ever expected to see. And so it's like, great. It's like, yes, love the character. He's good. Keep watching stuff that he's in. Make him become popular.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone back and I've read the Miles Morales comics. And I really, the thing that I love most about them is that they feel very much like a Spider-Man story. You know, you've got a lot of the tropes that you see in a lot of superhero stories, you know, balancing a secret identity, dealing with school, dealing with girls or boys or whatever, you know, trying to balance a normal life with your superhero-ness, but also trying to figure out, you know, like, okay, when comes the point where I have to use these abilities that I've, you know, stumbled into in some cases, for the greater good. You know, when can I use them for myself? Should I ever do that? You know, and I feel like a lot of those things came into the Miles Morales comics as I was reading them. And it's really, I don't know, I feel like I should point this out, but Miles is an interesting character. We know that Peter Parker becomes Spider-Man because he lost his Uncle Ben, and he could have prevented it if he hadn't been so self-centered. Miles, it's less about that and more about like he ends up becoming Spider-Man before these things happen, but he usually ends up losing a relative of some sort. And depending which media you consume, it can be a different person. In Into the Spider-Verse, it's Uncle Aaron. And actually in the comics, it's Uncle Aaron too. But in the comics, he also loses his mother, Rio. And in, like, if you played the 2018 Spider-Man game, it's his dad. Like, it's a different relative depending on the medium. And it's just like, wow, they just really want to, you know, like, I don't know. It just feels like they want to target his different members of his family. And it's just like, wow, this kid's going to have it rough no matter which way it goes, you know?
That's, you know, again, that is, you know, the Spider-Man mythos. It's like, are you really, which again kind of ties back to the, seems like a plot point they're going for the new movie. Yeah. Which I think, my theory is, I think that it's going to be something's targeting his dad, and that it's going to be a, you know, he's trying to save his father, instead of, and that's kind of like, oh no, if you don't let this thing happen, something bad will, something even worse will go on.
That's kind of the feeling I get too. Is
the goblin choice moment, like every now and then a writer comes along and asks you to make a sadistic choice.
Spider-Man. I'm going to continue, and we'll get a last bit of chatter in. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse premiered in December 2018 to critical acclaim, with many critics hailing it as one of the best superhero films ever made. The film's end credits scene teased the arrival of even more versions of Spider-Man, setting the stage for future sequels and spin-offs. And due to its enormous success, the fast-approaching arrival of its sequel, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, will doubtlessly thrill another round of eager moviegoers. Michael, And you already started to answer this. What are you looking forward to most about Across the Spider-Verse? Do you have any particular hopes for this movie?
Tony, what are your rules on cursing? Like, can you bleep me out? Like, if I say a naughty word, I really hope that this whole movie is fuck your stupid corporate plot line. I really, really hope that from what it seems like that the plot is, yeah, this is where corporate says your lore has to go, buddy, and Miles is like, nah, I hate that. This does not have to be what my plot line is. Like, I love that kind of stuff. It's just kind of gets to and I know it comes a bit of a meme, like, oh, they're gonna what is it, shatter your expectations, or no, subvert your expectations. Yeah, if you do it right, that can be great.
Yeah.
And I hope that is exactly what they do. And I hope you have an edgy, broody, Spider-Man 2099 there to be like, no, the plot has to always go down this way, kid. And I'm like, yeah, shut up, Oscar Isaac. Like, I'm gonna whatever. Like, I mentioned this to you before, but and again, I don't think I'm spoiling anything because I don't know the plot outside from what's in posters or trailers. There is a Chinese poster of the movie, and it casts Miles in the Sun Wukong outfit. And Journey to the West has always been about now, this is where I'm a little worried. It is always about a character whose whole trait is, I'm here to break your storyline, and I don't want to do what God wants. Like, that is Son Goku,
Okay.
Sun Wukong as a character. Now, that usually ends with Buddha kind of being like, no, really, go back to the prescribed plot line, though, or I'm going to reveal to you how little you fit into the scheme of my cosmic palm. I'm hoping that it's not, that there's more to that, but I think that Chinese poster casting him as Sun Wukong is really indicative of where I hope this plot goes. Like, no, there's a cosmology that I'm here to disrupt, and I'm here to crash all your fancy banquets and contrived plot sacred cows. That's where I'm hoping it goes. I'm hoping they know exactly where a sequel is always supposed to go, and I would credit them for being subversive enough to know that that's what we need to see at this point. I don't need any more like, oh, the second plot is always the darker one. I was like, no, how about it is the happier one? I don't know. Like, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy kind of did that too a little bit. It's like, oh, you would expect the second Guardians movie to be more about Thanos and Infinity Stones. They went, nah, what if it's just a dude hashing it out with his cosmic space dad?
Yeah.
And nothing else. And it's really good. So I'm hoping it's the same kind of thing.
Okay. All right. So when Miles goes, nah, I think I'm gonna do my own thing. There's a lot of hope on in that particular line.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
No, I agree. And I mean, like, I think I'm kind of with you on this. Like, I'm really kind of the opinion that there really is a very kind of established formula of Spider-Man storytelling. We've seen it in all of the movies, and it feels like, in a way, this movie has a chance of going, yeah, I see, that's all good if you like that kind of thing, but that's not the only way to tell a Spider-Man story. And I really want, like, I want to see what that is, for one, and I want to see it be successful, for another. I want to kind of explode this whole thing where it opens up a multiverse of possibilities.
I see what you did there.
That allow not only for, like, better types of storytelling, like just different types and everything, but that we can just see a lot of different portrayals of Spider-Man, Spider people, Spider totems, whatever you want to call them, and just like, I mean, I think it's kind of amazing already that we have a live action Spider-Man who is still active, basically. And then we've also got an animated Spider-Man franchise. Like, we've got these things going on at the same time. And I've always kind of asked the question in my head, why not continue to do this? Tell a different Spider-Man story, just, fine, use multiverse. It's just like, why can't we do Craven's Last Hunt animated, you know, or live action, and just like, it's just a different Spider-Man. It's a different multiverse for that Spider-Man or something, or find someone who looks like Tom Holland at age 40 and do that story or something, like there are ways that you could, write Spider-Man that I feel are kind of limited by, I think, for lack of a better term, just like corporate business as usual. And it doesn't have to be that way,
I mean, it doesn't. I think that's always been a very big issue for nerds of our age, who have been amused and entertained and then bored by a single property for so long that whenever something really cool comes along that's part of a bigger continuity, we go, ooh, look how refreshing that was. But other people don't have that. And so for all the people who may appreciate the message behind something, honestly, is kind of, it doesn't end in a nihilistic way, but like Craven's Last Hunt is a very dark story.
Oh God, yes.
I don't know, like, if you're talking about what Spider-Man is as a property, man, if you tried to sell that, you would run into problems of parents bringing their kids to a movie about a dude who's going to commit suicide to show Spider-Man what's up. Like, that doesn't match. Like, that would be that would be terrible. But us, we're like, yeah, no, it's cool, but it's really a really good story if you kind of know what was going on at the time and what Spider-Man is.
Right. And so you obviously don't target that story to children. Yes, I know Spider-Man will always appeal to children. But if you do a story of an older Spider-Man in that kind of a, like, you could market that in a way where parents are very clearly going to be like, I don't think I'm going to take you to see this one, my 5-year-old.
Well, that is where DC did a better job, until they didn't, of doing their animated movies. And they had a really good thing going for, I want to say, 20 years of DC solid,
animation is legendary.
Yes, until they went whole hog on trying to connect them together, and then they tried to give them a continuity, and then they ended it in the worst, most obscene thing I've ever seen, which was that Constantine Darkseid Trinity War crap, which, while Trigon Superman versus Darkseid was fun, I did not need to see all those characters get carved up into parademons. You could absolutely, well, Marvel did actually try to do that in the 2007 2008. They had a Doctor Strange animated movie. We watched the Hulk versus Thor and Thor Wolverine versus Hulk movies. Those things were great.
Yeah, they were.
They should have kept. They should have always kept that, and they still could. Nothing's stopping them. I just think that it's going to come down to with a straight, especially now with physical media no longer being as big a thing. I think you're going to have to leverage that against, well, if you put it on a streaming service, who's going to want to watch it? And I think that there will always be. It just gets back to, they should hype the comics more. And I really think that in the beginning of these comic book movies, they need to have a 5-minute trailer for, hey, we want to introduce you to the artist who made the stories we're basing this stuff on. Do you want to go see what, WandaVision? Well, actually, WandaVision, they should have had a little feature with King about being like, hey, here's what we based this comic run off of.
Right.
Go read the comic. When they have the movie of Civil War, they should have been like, here's the bundled, the omnibus version of Civil War. Go buy this comic. Like, here's the artist who made it. Like, there's a lot of stuff that can be hyped up about what's good about comics that still exists, so people go read them. I mean, I'm not saying everything should be, why don't we have an animated Craven's Last Hunt? I'm just saying you could do an episode of an animated anthology like Star Wars has been doing, like the best thing of all time when they made those Visions things. You could have like that terrible What If cartoon that was a good idea, just badly executed. You could totally make little vignette arcs of some of the best animated little segments for some of the best comics, of all time or whatever, and be like, hey, here's the writer of we keep using it, so I'm going to keep pointing back to it. Kraven's Last Hunt. Here's an animated 30-minute movie version of, you know, a summarized version of that plot or something, or 45 minutes or whatever.
Right. Yes,
if they cared about the longevity of their properties and making sure people ultimately go back and buy those comics, there is absolutely stuff they could do. But I also think it defaults back to, oh, why is Warner Brothers so stupid that they refuse to, for 20 years, ever have there be a Superman TV show? Because they're like, oh, people won't be able to tell. Or when Henry Cavill was Superman, they're like, oh, we can't put him in any of these other movies. People will be confused over how it works. It's like, no, they won't. Shut up. What? Stop that. So here we are. Anyway, it's my soapbox. Executives make dumb decisions because they don't want to ruin their cash cows. When in reality, we are perfectly capable of going, nah, there's a bracket you could put this stuff in. Just put it in the right bracket, and people will watch it.
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. And again, that's why I think you could do the Kraven's Last Hunt movie, that you market towards not kids, basically. And one of the reasons that I keep bringing up Kraven's Last Hunt, because, guys, like it or not, Sony is doing a Kraven movie later this year, and I'm going to be covering it. So expect me to talk a little bit more about Kraven as we get closer to October. But he's also being featured in Marvel's Spider-Man 2, the sequel video game. And so
that is no accident.
Yeah, no, it isn't. It isn't. And I'm cool with it. I like the synergy, but that's why I keep bringing it up. So,
well, actually, my wife has pointed out that she was playing it was like the puzzle block kind of Marvel games, and that they had synergy between that and the Marvel Snap, and it was very clearly intentional. Like, for all the grief I give DC about how they do not interconnect their properties, it's like, just put their feet to some fires and they'll still be like, no, people won't understand. Marvel is very much into internal brand synergy on a smaller level. Mm-hmm. I absolutely think that their choice of, a Kraven movie is going to be coming out soon. Hey, we're going to have him in this Spider-Man game. I bet there's going to be a Marvel Snap Kraven upgrade thing, next year or something.
Oh, I could totally see it.
I definitely think that. And personally, Kraven doesn't have any stories except for The Last Hunt. And personally, I don't think he's famous for anything else other than that. I'd be hard pressed to know.
That was one heck of a story.
It was. But I mean, I'll say that he had an interesting run when they had him paired with his voodoo kind of like lover /
Calypso.
Yeah, that was actually a really interesting time for his character, because that was what McFarlane, because that art was kind of driving a lot of that 80s dark edge kind of vibe.
Right.
I think there's a lot of cool stuff they could do with him, and I think just like Spider-Verse, there's a way to do it if you really want there to be. But this gets back to Lord and Miller just being the right people for the right job. Mm-hmm. I think if you get the right people who love what they're doing, and they can look at this thing beyond being we can make some real money. You like Spider-Man? We'll make lots of Spider-Man. I think they took a story and they went, ooh, we really like this. But didn't you say that they said that they asked for permission first to say, let us do this, but let us do it our way?
I mean, my understanding, and I've only been able to look a little bit into it, is that they would do an animated Spider-Man movie on the condition that they get to adapt Dan Slott's Spider-Verse.
Yeah. They looked at something and went, we love this, and we will work with it, but you have to let us make changes.
Yes.
Because I think that is rare and I'm good for Marvel for allowing them to do that. They do that sometimes. Like, they let Gunn do a lot of things, because that clearly doesn't happen on every movie that they make. Because you'll hear stories about, what one director is, or some directors do and don't fit into what I guess I'm just going to call the Marvel system. So I'm glad that they made a side branch of that for animation, and then they sounds like they came to them, the they came to
The
Marvel
studio
and said,
went to.
"Hey,
Oh,
and
okay.
we want to do this." I'm actually really curious who contacted who, and if it just came down to a, did they look at Lord and Miller and go, actually, they would have had to. They probably, because they did the Lego movie first, and then they were
Yeah.
trying to do Star Wars, and
Mhm.
then this. So they've had a relationship with them for a while. I'm sure it was a, hey, we want to keep you in the system. What can we do to what would you do if you got to make your own thing? And they went, ooh, let us do this. And so I think that's the best positive result of that's the positive angle of Marvel's studio system that they've
Right.
made is they had people they want to keep around and they want to keep them happy if they're very good. I think that also means that you get, you know, uh, other people like if you don't like the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, who was the director on that one? I
Oh,
hate to have
John Watts.
John Watts, right? I can't tell you who John Watts is outside of he's the Spider-Man movie guy. Whereas I don't know what he's famous for outside of that. But if you like his Spider-Man movies, they want to keep him around and they want to keep him in house doing stuff. And I know sometimes you get auteur directors that's a really good fit, like Sam Raimi, maybe directing Secret Wars. Ooh, that's kind of cool. He's got his own vision. And then it could get into, oh, it's that Watts guy. He's doing Fantastic Four. No, thanks. I already saw his Spider-Man movies. I don't want any more of that. I'm
Right.
fine, or whatever. However that system works.
Which
So I'm glad that
I think I've heard that he is being tapped for Fantastic Four. So
or he was. I forget now if
yeah,
he
I
if
don't
he's
I don't know
soured
all
on
of it,
that.
but yeah. Okay, well, I think that's gonna close out this segment of the podcast. Hopefully, you enjoyed this look back into the past of Spider-Verse, the film franchise, and are as eager to see the next installment as Michael and I are. Michael, any final thoughts about Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, and anything that led up to it before we go?
Oh no, just more Spider-Man better. Two
Agreed.
Spider-Man good, four Spider-Man better.
Yes.
It's just 10 Spider-Man better. More Spider-Man, the more you get. The more there is to enjoy.
The
I
more of
hope
them
that
pointing at each other for the meme.
yeah, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that the more they can, the more that they show that you can adapt things and improve on them is good. I think the more that you can get creators who have a singularly unique vision that also understands the characters really well, that isn't just we need to make the next link in a story chain. Like, say what you will about where MCU is presently. I understand the criticism pretty well of some people being like, yeah, I don't know where we're going yet. And until we get there, I don't care about these later movies. I think they're fine, but that's just kind of what the MCU is for
Right.
me. So
Yeah.
I think that it's good that they have another way of telling those stories that you don't need that tethered to. And
Right.
I think they should keep that. I hope that it does gangbusters and makes a lot of money. And I hope my kids love it. And I hear next year that a lot of my students are like, Mr. Hale, did you see that thing? And I'll be
Right.
like, yes, I'm very excited. Let's talk about the thing. Like, because those kids don't know anything about Spider-Man, the comics. Like, some do, but
Mhm.
most of them, that's the only Spider-Man they know. They know the movies and
Right.
they love the movies. And so
Right.
I hope that the more stuff they give them, the more they can enjoy. So more
Okay.
Spider-Man good.
Good. Good. All right. So we're gonna do one more segment. This is gonna be a fairly short one, but I'm gonna look into a spider mail. This is email of just chats from listeners and viewers. This also includes any questions that you may have about Spider-Man. I'll do my best to answer them. But I have one from Hale to the Geeks who asks, do you know in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse how Aunt May has a super cool bat cave in the gardening shed? Was that a comic thing or something cool just for the movie? So, and Michael, if I put a foot out of line here and you know something that I don't, feel free to correct me. But as far as I know, Aunt May essentially being Lucius Fox, is pretty much just something cool that they did for Into the Spider-Verse. I haven't really known her in any iteration of the comics, or even the video games at this point, of her being like, being able to maintain a spider cave or spider lair or whatever, where You know, it looks like he's got a collection of frickin' Spider-Man, Iron Man suits or something, you know, and where she has like, you know, where she can whip up a pair of web shooters for someone. So to my knowledge, it's just something that was made specifically for Into the Spider-Verse. And frankly, I mean, I'm going to just take the how plausible is that question. I'm just going to push it off to the side. I don't care. It was cool. I liked it.
It was cool.
And it was so much fun, you know. So I think it really worked. But the basic answer is yeah. If as far as I know, it was just for the Into the Spider-Verse movie.
Yep.
So all right. So that's going to end this segment. If you would like to send an email or Spider-Man related question to the web line, please feel free to email me at spideylibrarian@gmail.com. Or pose your question in the Spidey Questions channel on my Discord server. I'll have an invite in the live stream description where applicable in other show notes. And I believe that brings us to the end of the show. If you enjoyed this episode of the Webline, please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube channel, simply named Spidey Librarian. I'll be working in the coming days to get the podcast audio onto the places where people listen to their podcasts. So when you see us on, you know, Spotify, Stitcher, or another such service, please leave a review and a rating. You can find me on my socials under the name Spidey Librarian on Twitter, Instagram, WordPress, and Twitch. And finally, if you'd like to shoot me an email, you can again contact me at spideylibrarian@gmail.com, where I'll be happy to hear your thoughts, rants, and ideas. Michael, where could anyone looking for more of your dulcet tones find you?
You can find stuff that Connor and I have made. If you just Google KMP, just KMP, like a radio kind of thing, like KMP podcast, and just SoundCloud. Most of our stuff is stored there. We've alternated between having a website and not having a website, but the eternal archive is our SoundCloud database.
SoundCloud. Okay.
So we've got, like, our last episode was, we talked about the anime Giant Robo, which is incredible. We talked about a few anime movies at the time. One of them was Patlabor 2, which is incredible. We're going to have a crossover episode with Japan on Film with Perry Constantine. He invited Connor and I to talk about the movie Akira. That will probably go up, last we heard, pretty soon. So
okay.
We've tended to do a lot of crossover things with people of late. So it's just KMP Podcast.
Okay.
Connor is my co-host, who's one of the nicest human beings ever. Connor, if you're listening, you're such a wonderful human being. But that's us.
All right, and thank you very much. Be sure to join us next Sunday on the Webline, where I'll be discussing and reviewing the newest Spidey film release, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And thank you for listening. And until the next episode, I'll be wishing you a good day. Take care.
Did you just thwip?
I did.
That's amazing. Okay, it's wonderful.
No, I thwip all the time. I do them on my live streams. I start with a thwip. I literally do.
Oh, wonderful.
All right. Anyways, thank you for listening and watching this live stream. And again, I will hopefully have this. We've got the live stream will be archived as a podcast episode on YouTube. And again, I will be taking the audio and pushing it out at some point in the near future. So until then, take care.